Right.
All right, so we're live on Facebook, pardon me, on YouTube.
Yes,
So
sir.
feel free to get it going, brother.
All right. Well, Hotel Peace family, greetings to all those who are joining us this morning, Tuesday morning, for our Black conversation. Of course, my name is Aundar. I'm the co-founder of Melaneyes Media. We're an independent film company based out of San Antonio, Texas. And our focus and interest is really around the Black experience, documenting our story, sharing our story through documentary films and other educational presentations. Of course, we're excited about Tuesday morning conversation because it's just a conversation about something that's going on within the world of Black people that we just want to have a conversation and talk about. So, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to pass it over to my brother, my friend, Brother Born Logic, and going to kind of guide us through our discussion for this morning. Hotel, my brother.
Peace, brother. Peace and greetings, family. Thank you all for having us. These Tuesday morning Black conversations, just really looking at cultural topics, history topics that are relevant to our community and throughout the diaspora. And so today, it's our pleasure to be with you. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. This conversation series is something that we've been doing on a weekly basis. You can go back and catch up on the previous episodes that we've recorded. And once again, these do take place on Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. And so with that being said, today's topic is going to be the challenges of Black manhood. And what we're going to do real quick, going to just pull up a screen share so we can have an image and a little bit of text to kind of give us a reference point. Can you see that, Aundar?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so the challenges of Black manhood. Found this quote. It comes from a report by the Brookings Institute that was released in 2020. And it said that women live longer than men on average, but there are big race gaps too. Life expectancy is lowest for Black men among Black and white people. According to the CDC National Center for Health Statistics, both at birth and at age 65. For white men, life expectancy at birth is about 6 years lower than at age of 65. But for Black men, the gap is over 9 years, showing that Black men are more likely to die prematurely. And so when you see this and when you hear that statistic, Aundar, what comes to mind? What are some thoughts you have?
Just overall, brother, as Black men, I know we face many challenges that definitely threaten our life expectancy. And of course, we can start off just looking at some of the basic things that always, I think, are highlighted. Of course, we look at just our health overall as Black men. We suffer in many categories, from high blood pressure, diabetes, just stress in general, really. But the fact is, health-wise, we always seem to be at the bottom. And of course, contributing to that, we probably get less health services. We pay less attention to our health overall as men. So that's just on the health side. Of course, we can look at the education or the miseducation and lack of knowledge, lack of education, development in the sense of getting those kind of maybe degrees that are necessary for employment. And then I want to come back to that a little bit later, talking about miseducation. But then we look at high unemployment, mass incarceration. I mean, it's across the board. It's so many categories that can be looked at that impacts the life expectancy of Black men that, But I think I would say this, brother, and then we can just kind of open this up. The bottom line to me is that the challenges of Black manhood is, of course, many layers, but I think at the very foundation, particularly here in America, and in many ways across the world, is that this idea of racism, white supremacy has really created an anti-Black environment, particularly when it comes to Black men. And I think because of that, when we talk about all these different categories, if we're talking about high unemployment, miseducation, or health risks that Black men face, many of these things can be followed back and really seen that it's at the very root of it is this idea that Black men are under attack because we live in a society that is threatened by Black men and Black manhood. So I think if we maybe understood that, then we can better understand the many challenges that are facing Black men, in this society.
No, I agree with you, and I think when you brought forth that it's a lot of layers to this, I think that's important. Right here, we're talking about life expectancy, but that really, the quantity of the years really breaks down to the quality of the life.
Yes.
And so when we look at the factors that you mentioned, just talk about education, healthcare, employment, these things contribute, stress levels, these things contribute to the lower quality of life for Black men. And I think that right now in society, I don't know exactly how to categorize it, but people are not, I don't think everybody is aware of this. Here at Melaneyes Media, we always try to bring light and attention to things that affect us as a people. I know that we have quite a few presentations that are geared towards bringing acknowledgement to our Black sisters and their struggles and their contribution to history, and also the mental effects of our society on them. And we don't necessarily have anything particular to manhood. And so we had tossed around the idea of creating something specifically just addressing the challenges that Black men face. And as a Black man, reading through this Brookings Institute report, I don't even know if I realized some of these things. And it really kind of brought to my attention, this is a true issue. This is something that we got to address because it affects us as a people, because it affects Black men. Anything that affects Black men is an issue. Anything that affects Black women is an issue for us as Black people. So one of the things that was brought up in this report that I found very interesting, and I'm trying to find her name, Camille Bassett, said there needs to be a new deal for Black men, and New Deal in reference to the program set up by President Roosevelt in the early 1900s. I'm assuming that's what she's referencing. And I think about that because if you think about education, if you think about stress levels, if you think about mass incarceration, there is a system put in place to really cripple the Black man, his strength and his position, especially in the family, but also in society. And I don't think anybody has articulated that in a better way than Dr. Frances Cress Welsing in her book, The ISIS Papers. And so I always use that as a great reference point, as a great reference material. And I think it's something that we can all continue to learn from. And once again, just as a Black man, I just reading through this report made me think more about my health, my mental health, my physical health, made me think about my sons and nephews, my brothers. And so it's just something to really, really at the top of my mind this morning. So.
And I appreciate that, brother, because, just in that, the thing that kind of also I reflected on was that's the, I know the kind of society and world we live in and the kind of attack that we're under and, the suffering we're going through as Black people and Black men. And I appreciate you just mentioning Dr. Frances Cress Welsing and acknowledging the fact that she, tried to make it very clear for us that it was a pinpointed attack on Black men because they see us as a threat, to white domination. But I think that the problem, one of the problems I think we're also having to deal with is that when you live in this kind of society, then you start to adopt certain ways of thinking, to survive in the society and adopt certain ideas that are anti to yourself. And I think as Black men, living in an anti-Black society, we have adopted certain thinking and behavior that really threatens our life ourselves. And I won't go into, but the idea is that I think what we are starting to see is that we engage in activities, that shorten our life expectancy. I mean, from the foods we eat, or the lack of foods or nutritional foods we eat, to, engaging in activities, if it's drug or alcohol, lack of rest, just not living a healthy lifestyle, then ultimately leads to, the less expectancy or life expectancy or shortened life expectancy. And I think as Black men, what then we have to start to realize is that we have to take accountability and responsibility for correcting these things, even some of those things you talked about in the Brookings. I think it was in that article that you're talking about. I started looking at and asking myself, then what do we do? Because we need a new deal, and we need to fight for a new deal. But ultimately, the new deal must first begin with us.
Absolutely. Brother, one thing I was thinking about, and I wanted to bring this to I want to ask you this too. What does it even take to be a man? How do we define manhood, especially Black manhood? Because I think that's part of the problem. There's some confusion, and I don't know if young men, older men even sometimes really understand what that truly means to truly be a man, or what our abilities, our role is, and things of that nature. So I want to pose that to you, Baba Aundar. What's your thoughts?
Well, first, brother, I think that is an excellent question. I think we all should be asking that question of ourselves and each other as Black men. I was looking at a quote by Frederick Douglass, and where he said, "It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." And it's a powerful quote because basically he's making us aware that we're raising sometimes broken men. And I think it feeds into the question that you're asking. And then actually, just before we came on, we had talked about Dr. Jawanza Kajufu and the conspiracy to destroy, countering the conspiracy to destroy Black boys. But what you just said, brother, is really the note I took. And that is, what is it to be a Black man? And what is it, Black manhood? And first I say, I don't know about you, brother, but I was never taken through any kind of training or understanding of what it is to be a Black man. No one really ever set me down and said, okay, this is what you're going to do as a Black man. This is going to be your responsibility. This is your requirement. This is what we need of you. No one set me down. So many times, the examples of Black manhood was the example of Black men within our community. And of course, sometimes we grow up in communities that don't necessarily give us the best examples of what it is to be a Black man because they haven't been taught, So one of the things I think, brother, to be a Black man is to definitely be knowledgeable, of course, seek wisdom and understanding, and then apply those things, practice self-discipline, practice self-respect, being responsible, being a producer, a provider, a protector, being a husband, a father, just a good brother. I think all these things, bring together what it is to be a Black man. But the idea is, and I would say one of the main things to me is just developing the good character of what it is to be a man, being honest and just being just and doing what is right. And I mean, I know these are words, but it requires now action and engaging in activity, human activity, that ultimately requires that you live these things, not just speak of them. But the bottom line I'm saying is that to be a Black man, I think we have to see examples of a Black man. And then we have to, I think we need manhood training. I think we need to be engaged as Black men, we need to constantly be engaged in conversations and activities that forces us or challenges us to be Black men.
Brother, while you were talking, I had so many thoughts. I agree so much with you. I had to write some things down because I just feel like, just some excellent points made. Like you, I don't know if I ever really had anyone sit me down. I don't know if I had anyone really provide any true direction. You pick up odds and ends and things that you hear and see, but there was no defined structure. And one thing that I did receive more structure and instruction as I became older, which was supremely valuable to me as an individual. It's been supremely valuable to my family, my immediate and extended. And what I wanted to do, just point out some things and give definition and give context. So when we talk about the man as the protector, let's start there. Men have certain qualities that are specific, that are helpful to that position. Sometimes we can look at physical strength, and that's true. If you have a family, if you have a woman and you have children, then the man, he's probably going to be the larger, the more able to deal with physical combat and protecting the family. What that also entails, though, is making sure that you are a shield for your woman and for your children, to protect them or be the first line of defense against any threat. That can be a physical threat. That can also be a mental threat. My son pointed out something to me that I never even noticed that happened one time. We were downtown at a New Year's celebration, a lot of people downtown, and we were kind of standing in our own little group, my wife, my children, and a man in a group tried to walk in the middle of us, and my son he told me that I put my arm out and made them walk around us. And now I don't even remember that happening, but my son pointed that out to me, which one showed me that he noticed it and it taught him something, but two, it was an example. So rather than allow some outside figure to come into our cipher, into our circle, I corralled them on the outside. And I think that that's an example. That's a form of protection, is making sure that we stay together, that we are putting ourselves in the forefront to make sure that, we can be on the lookout for any dangers mentally or physically to our families. I know we talk about being taught, not sit with your back, don't sit with your back to the door of any restaurant or public place, so that we can see who's entering, because we have to be in that psyche of being security for our family. So that's one thing. And then I wanted to speak about mentally. So for myself, I'm always shielding what comes into the minds of my children. So I'm very particular about who I will allow around them to be an influence. And so I'm always checking what this person's mentality is. What are they going to say? What type of thoughts do they have? So that if it's not in alignment with our values as a family, then I'm keeping that person away. Okay. A provider means that you are able to give and supply value. Now, a lot of times we think about that in a monetary sense, and I'm not going to discount that, because in a capitalistic society, that's the fuel of the economy. That's what keeps the ball rolling a lot of times. And so we do have to make sure that that's in play. Being a provider is definitely important in that regard. However, one thing that I've also come to realize in my older years is that value is providing things that are necessary for the sustenance of the family. And that can be providing guidance, providing advice, providing stability in emotional situations. A lot of times when tragedy happens, emotions flare up. The men are the ones that really need to keep it grounded in logic and in reason, making sure that we are stable and that we're not fluttering and faltering in the face of adversity. So that's all the things that are of value, we should be able to provide. And like you mentioned earlier, knowledge, understanding, a strong reference point, stability, all of these things can fall under that category. And I think once we start looking at what actually it takes to be a provider, to be a protector, then we understand that better. But one of the other things I also realized too is that we have to make sure that we're dependable, because if anything, when we say that we are the foundation of the family, a lot of times that comes back to dependability. Rain, hail, sleet, or snow, we're going to be there, we're going to be present, we're going to be available. So just some thoughts, as you were talking, brother, just sparked so many ideas from me.
No, that's excellent. And I appreciate you breaking that out, so we have a better understanding, because sometimes, as we are talking, we say words, but then sometimes we need to break it down a little, so we have a better understanding of examples and giving us understanding of what it is how to be a provider and a protector. But the last thing you just said, I thought really caught my attention, brother, and that's dependability. One of the things that in this society that has happened, of course, being robbed of our wealth in many ways, an opportunity to gain wealth. Of course, many times we've been kind of pushed and forced into a welfare system, depending on a system to provide for us, But within that welfare system, what has happened, particularly here in America, is that they have extracted the Black man out of the home in order for the family to receive welfare. And basically it's a tool, I think, to break up the Black family. But the idea is that it also led to the fact that we were no longer, as Black men in the home, to be dependable and take care of our family. And that we were there no longer to be an example for our children, particularly the Black male who was being raised in those homes. I've said this before, there's an African proverb that says a son learns to walk like his father, meaning that a son watches his father. And just like you just acknowledged, Ray's son talking about what he saw you do, a son learns to walk like his father and do those things that his father is doing for the family and for the community and being a man. And of course, we always hope that is the best examples of manhood. But the idea is that in order for that to happen, we have to be dependable. We have to be in the home, in the community, setting that example for those young brothers who are coming up behind us. And one thing I always appreciate, and I know we've had this conversation before, because I did not grow up in a home where we had a Black man. And I know you shared similars, but the idea is that we identified with certain men here and there and picked up certain, traits and characteristics that we thought we could embrace and take as our own. But I think what I wanted to ask, talking about going from dependability, but to ask, because see, you shared with me something that I think as you got older, you engaged in a process that helped you to understand yourself as a Black man and understand Black manhood. And I think that's important, because it's just not something that magically happened. It was something that you engaged in, an activity or a program or an organization that helped you take on that mindset to be a Black man.
Indeed. And what happened was, in my early 20s, seeking knowledge of self, wanting to learn more about myself, learn more about my history, our origins as a people, brought me to my nation, just dealing with the 5 percenters. And there I was engulfed with a brotherhood. I was surrounded by men. I was surrounded by that masculine energy. And it wasn't in a way that was combative or confrontational. It was embracing, but yet challenging me. Yes. And that made me grow up so quick. And it really instilled in me a sense of strength and power. And so I'll always be grateful for that. And it would be small little things just in conversation. I remember one time having a gathering. I brought my father with me. My daddy came and we were taking some things over to the park to have a meeting that day. And I was gonna leave my dad at the apartment while I went and took some stuff. And the brother told me, no, bring him with us. He a man. And it was just, the house was full of women at the time. He was like, nah, you bring him with us. You know what I mean? We can all work together regardless to what he know or what he's a part of. We all together. And so that always stood out to me, something that the brother shared with me, but just small little things. And I think, you know, even just passing on the small things like opening doors. Always tell my son, make sure if you see a woman carrying bags and anything heavy, I don't care who it is. You don't even have to know them. Offer assistance. And I know in today's society, some of these things are actually frowned upon now. I'm still going to teach it though, because ultimately, as a people, we can't let the society change our culture and who we are. And those things are important. And being that example, you know, just and you'd be surprised. And when I say you, I'm not saying you personally, but I think people will sometimes be surprised at what just being consistent and dependable can do, just the strength that provides. It don't take a lot of muscle. It don't take a lot of rah-rah macho-ness. It's just sometimes that silent presence can be really very powerful in itself. And so I know, just like I said, I have so many examples of brothers that did and said things that really gave me just like insight into my manhood and my masculinity, helping me understand. Because what this really alludes to was said here by the CDC, that it's a great pressure. That's what we're not really speaking and acknowledging. That's to be anybody's protector other than your own is a lot of pressure. To provide for others, it's a lot of pressure. To be consistent, it's a lot of stress and pressure. And when you're not sure of yourself, when society is feeding you mixed messages and you don't feel like you can express yourself and have the support, that leads to stress. And that's what can start to eat you inside. And we know the biggest killer is stress. Because that's what leads to a lot of these diseases, and things of that nature that harm us physically. And a lot of times it starts in the mind with the stress.
Now, that's an excellent point, brother, because I think as Black men, we are under a lot of stress, because I think what eats away at us is that we want to do better. We want to be providers. We want to be protectors. We want to do those things because I think it's innate, it's natural within us to do these things. But when you live in a society and you feel like you lack the capability of fulfilling those kind of responsibilities that you want to fulfill, you start to drift away. And I mean, of course, many times we find ourselves engaging in activities that then gets us removed from that space where we feel like we're not capable of fulfilling, you know. But it's very stressful, brother. And I mean, as a Black man growing up in this society, I can see the roller coaster ride I have been on to get to the point where I'm at now, at least having a better understanding, more knowledge, and better understanding of, you know, my responsibility for myself, my family, my community, but just the challenges that we face as Black men, you know, and responsibility that, you know, just being a better example for, you know, my children and for the community children, and then trying to establish a new model for what it is to be a Black man, you know, because ultimately we need modelship, we need examples. And I think ultimately that's going back to what we initially, and I think one of the things we said earlier, and that is that we need some way of, I think, training. And I'll say this, brother, you know, I was, of course, engaged in a rites of passage program where I thought was very effective and impactful for Black males and the Black females. But we particularly wanted to highlight Black maleship, Black manhood. And I thought the training that the young brothers went through really encouraged them to at least understand their challenges, understand their responsibility, but also just sometimes it just awakened it really awakened them to understand that they are Black men, they're living in this kind of society, but when it's all said and done, you have the ability and you have the responsibility to overcome all, obstacles in order to be what we need to be as Black men. Be that provider, protector, be disciplined, be responsible, gain knowledge, build community, build businesses, do all those things that we should be doing as Black men to provide for ourselves and our family.
Beautiful points, brother. And I can't tell you how much I love the idea of a rites of passage group, and that's something I always want to be a part of. And maybe that's something we can talk about, because I would love to be a part of something like that, because I think that's supremely important. And nothing happens by happenstance. In our villages, in our tribes, going back to our past, we provided these things distinctly. And I think sometimes we are assuming things, and that's why we don't get the results that we want from our young men and our young women. We're just assuming, and we're allowing society to give them examples and guide them and teach them, because we're not directly saying to them, you should consider doing this, or you should learn, I'm going to show you how to do this. And so we let the society kind of give them direction. And that's not the way, at least not for us as a people. And so being very intentional about what we teach, how we teach it, and just actually teaching and showing someone something can be a lifelong lesson and a value for many, many years.
Excellent. Brother, now I was getting ready because you just brought up something else. But I know we try to do it within a time frame, brother. But I really hope that we can really continue this conversation, because I think it's different aspects of this conversation that can be of great value to us and our community. And I really appreciate some of the things, your thoughts that you have shared, in your own personal experiences. I think has really opened us up, at least have shared some with me to take a greater look into. And but I really hope that we can continue this kind of conversation, brother, about the challenges of Black manhood. In particular, I think, maybe at some point talk about a rites of passage program and how to bring something like that together, because ultimately we do need training for Black manhood.
Absolutely, brother. I definitely concur. And so with that being said, like you said, I do think that it's important that we stick to a time frame, but I know I got excited. I definitely feel like it's something we definitely need to revisit and maybe extend out in the future. So in the chat, family, whenever you do watch this video, let us know your thoughts. Give us your feedback. We are always monitoring comments. Please like and subscribe, like this video, and then subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're just striving to build our following, and we appreciate your support. And until we have the opportunity to speak again, thank you and peace.
Hotep, family.